Hello, so Clara Schumann, Prelude and Fugue in B flat, grade 8. Very brave choice, very brave choice. I've got to say that out of all of the pieces in this grade 8 book that I've prepared for a performance, this is by far the most difficult, because generally I think as you progress through the grades and you progress through technical difficulties and you get to do more and more sophisticated music, the stuff that becomes difficult is stuff that has lots of voices all happening at the same time. And if we take all the other List A grade 8 pieces, in the Bach, or at least the ones in the book, I'm not looking at all the alternative ones for now, in the Bach you generally have really a maximum of two things, that maybe three at a push, so... now maybe this can be said to be two things going on, but not really. It's just two things going on at the same time. The Haydn... it's generally a tune and chord accompaniments. It generally doesn't have much where you've got a lot of counterpoint going on. It's generally quite straightforward. And then you've got this Clara Schumann, and the prelude there's a lot going on. So even in the first bar, you've got which is your tune. And then you've got so and then as well as and then the whole way through you've got, there is a lot going on, and then there's so much. And then here you've got a bass line, a tenor line, you've got an alto line there. So there's four parts, in quite a lot of this prelude. And then there's the fugue, where you need to be able to hear four things all happening at the same time. What I find with a lot of my students and with a lot of amateur pianists who I watch is when we are striving and trying hard and under a little bit of pressure, it's kind of normal that we tend to go into a narrow focus, that we're sort of focusing on one part, we listen to one part. And when you're playing music that's very contrapuntal with many voices all happening at the same time, you have to develop an ability to not focus in and just be able to just sit back and hear all the voices happening at the same time, so that as you play, you're not going, what's that doing there, what's that doing there, what's that voice, but you just hear everything. That is a skill. That's one of the hardest skills, I think, that you can develop as a pianist, and it's one of the last skills that you develop. So out of all of the pieces in this book, this is the one that really requires the most contrapuntal listening. Very challenging. Also, it's, I've got to admit that, there was a time as a pianist when I used to be quite good at sight reading. I used to do a lot of reading as I was performing, like when I was at school, when I was at university, and then, times around that. I played in a lot of chamber groups, I played piano trios, piano quartets, and septets, whatever. I accompanied people a lot. I had to do concerts where I just literally learned the music off the skin of my teeth. I barely looked at it and had to perform. And so, I was pretty good at just being able to look at music, follow it, and perform. Now then I spent a long time not playing music, not playing piano. I spent a long time away from it. And then when I came back, I wasn't doing any of that stuff, but what I was doing was I was learning very, very ambitious music at a very high level where I just memorized it. So it was very rare that I'd need to perform reading music. And so what I find now is that, it's one of those things, you use it or you lose it, And so if you are not constantly reading and performing, it's something that becomes difficult. And so part of the journey in me presenting these grade 8 pieces to you guys on YouTube is like suddenly I'm having to find out, how did I used to do this? Now this is something that I spoke about in one of the other videos. I think it was the Poulenc. So if you watch the tutorial on the Poulenc, again in this year's grade 8, I talk about how I sort of discovered that the trick to this is that you have to practice looking at a bar and then having a photographic memory chunk in your mind's eye. So you look at the first bar and then it's like you hold that chunk of visual information in your mind. And then what you do is you play the first bar, but as you're starting playing the first bar, you're then looking at the second bar and grabbing that visual chunk, and then as you get to the second bar, you're then grabbing the third bar. So you're at least a bar ahead, if not actually several bars ahead, ideally. And then the trick to this, what tends to happen when we're not confident and when we are not used to practicing reading, so when we are memorizing, when we feel under pressure, when we feel that we're not good at reading, is we naturally then sort of, because of the way that our nervous systems work, we fixate on this note, on this note, on that note, and then we do not have the capability to just see an entire bar and just digest that information. Because when we feel under psychological pressure, our focus narrows down into individual elements. I'm writing a book about this stuff at the moment and about how to sort of bring yourself out of that. So, it's way too much to go into in a brief YouTube tutorial. But all I would say is just practice looking at a whole bar. See if you can develop the ability to look at the first bar, look at the first bar, look at the first bar, close your eyes. How much of that whole first bar can you see? Then if you can't see the whole thing, open your eyes and keep doing this. Now, at first, you might have to do this in one beat chunks, or you might just have to really just look for ages, or maybe just play the bar round and round. So let's take the first bar and then just play it round and round, really making sure that you're visually drinking in the detail in that first bar. So you're not looking at your hands, absolutely not looking at the hands. You're gradually being able to memorize visually what that first bar looks like on the page until you can look at it, close your eyes, and you can see every detail. You can see the shape of the notes, you can see the staccatos, you can see the slurs, you can see the crescendo, you can see P, you can see allegretto, you can see some of the fingerings, you can see your markings on the page. So close my eyes, yeah, I can see everything. And then you put that together, you put all that visual detail with what things feel like in your hands. I mean, really, this is a lot to go into. And so I might do other videos about this kind of thing at a different time. But if you can't do this and you're literally just looking at one note at a time, you can't really play this piece. There's just too much going on. And besides which, you need to follow all the different lines. Sometimes there's 4 things all going on at the same time. You can't do that if you're fixating in on individual notes. Or you have to memorize it. But even if you memorize it, there's a danger, like I see, and what a lot of my students do is they memorize it, but stare at their fingers. If you're staring visually at any one thing, you lose that ability to hear lots of things all happening. I did on my podcast an interview with a Russian concert pianist called Olga Georgievskaya, and in there we talk about some of the skills involved in being able to hear a lot of counterpoints and fugues and stuff going on. I'll put a link to that episode because it might be worth listening to that. And something that she said that stuck with me for a long time, that actually really heightened my ability to play fugues and counterpoint, was where she described the ability to kind of hear things in layers. And there was one point where she was, I can't remember, it's been so long since I listened to that podcast, but she was just basically describing the ability to hear things in space, that's there. And yeah, have a listen to that podcast and see what you think about it. So like, for example, if you listen to somebody else playing either this piece or something that has a lot of counterpoint, like let's say a fugue from the Well-Tempered Clavier by Bach, can you, as a listener, in your sofa or however it is that you're relaxed, that you listen to music, can you listen to something with a whole load of stuff going on, and can you hear all of it? And then conversely, can you zoom in and hear the top part, the bottom part, this middle part? Can you go in, can you zoom in and hear individual parts? And then can you zoom out and follow all the parts all going on? Huge topic, this one. But, not only experiment with your own playing, but experiment when you are listening to other music. How you zoom in, hear individual parts, how you zoom out, hear the whole thing. Anyway, so, the beginning. This really, I spent a little while thinking, how staccato do I want this left hand? And as it turns out, the more I play the staccato, the more I loved it staccato. I really like this. And what really does it for me, the key to, is, I think, imagining orchestral textures. Now, I really think that if you want to be a pianist, and I don't mean professional, I just mean you like playing the piano. If you want to be good at playing the piano, if you want to enjoy playing the piano, if you want to feel that you are making the most out of your ability to play the piano, you have to listen to as much music as you can. And by this I mean not just piano, but orchestral music, chamber groups, every possible style of classical music, and other styles if you want. But if you want to play classical music, you've got to listen to every genre that you can with every instrument, like especially violin and stringed instruments, but all kinds of instruments. Because what I find valuable from the beginning is hearing an orchestra, and this are pizzicato cellos, absolutely pizzicato cellos. And this are very sustained violins. I am actually a viola player, and so I've spent quite a good chunk of my life playing in orchestras. And this really helps because I know what it feels like to play pizzicato strings, to be immersed in an orchestra. And a lot of the time, like especially things like Beethoven piano sonatas, you can hear that what he wants is orchestral textures. Now, I believe very, very strongly in like a magic telepathy, that whatever a pianist is imagining in their mind, in sort of, if I hear strongly enough pizzicato cellos, and violins playing at the top, even though it's a piano, the more vividly I hear those things, the more someone will imagine those in my audience when I'm playing it. Even things like just playing a note, the crescendos, sometimes there just is a telepathy to this when you play the piano. So what I recommend is, can you close the piano lid and then, and in fact a lot of the time I recommend to my students, close the piano lid and can you hear everything? You should be able to hear this completely vividly, like the sound of your own piano. If you can't hear this super, super vividly, chances are you probably don't know it all that well. But then on top of that, so once you've develop the ability to just play on a table, on your piano lid, and hear your piano as vividly as if you were playing it, which is one of the most useful skills you can develop. Can you then hear cellos, violin, second violins, violas, flutes, maybe even wind instruments, maybe even French horns in the middle, and this will probably be quite difficult if you don't listen to a lot of orchestral music. But this is pizzicato cellos. If you are just trying to play this on the piano and you are just trying to play staccato, it's not going to sound great. It's got to be playful pizzicato cellos. And you want to hear you want to feel the emotions that this being played by an orchestra would give you. There's nothing like pizzicato cellos. It's really beautiful sound. So yes, be able to hear orchestral textures. Now you don't have to play the left hand staccato here, but it bothers me. I mean, you can, and actually, I think on the recording, I did listen to the people who buy this with the CD, with the optional CD. Although it is available on Spotify, and Spotify is where I listen to it. I think that the official version does go. I think so, but it's like, why has Clara Schumann written staccatos? If she's written staccatos, why would you just go... Why would you just ignore it? But you can. You really can if you're desperate to play this piece. I mean, the other thing is as well, the fugue is hard. Fugues are hard. The whole thing is difficult. The whole thing is difficult because... I did check out some people on YouTube who were playing it, and if you are going to play this piece, you need to be able to play this piece holding down all the individual parts. Like, so for example, if let's take from the beginning, and then so here, and then so here, you still want to be holding these two parts here. I don't understand why you would play it. Like, let's take bar 5. Now here, you still want to be holding on to the B flat in the second beat of bar 5. I don't understand someone who would play it and then let go of the B flat. It's really important to play it in such a way that you are holding every single individual part down. This is especially important in the fugue. I'll come to the fugue in a minute. But, you've got to be able to follow all the parts and hold all these notes down. So the first thing that jumps out at me, let's say bar 11. So bar 11. Now here, you should still be holding on to that B flat in the right hand. And then here, I'm still holding on to the B flat, and then the A gets held, but I'm still holding on to the C sharp in the right hand. And you should be able to see all this stuff in the Synthesia performance that I've put up. This is a lot of work. This really does take a lot of practice and work, especially for people coming up to grade 8 level, because it means you can't stare at individual parts. You need an awareness of every single part that's going on. This is kind of going to be very difficult to a lot of people who are used to sort of staring very hard either at the right hand or the left hand or the top part or the bottom part. You're doing a lot of juggling. You're juggling a lot of parts here. Anyway, so you can kind of half pedal it. So if you can just find the biting point of the pedal, so... And I've just found just the point of the pedal where you just just start to lift the dampeners, so it's sort of like, it's half pedalled. That's very dicey, and to be honest, I don't recommend that to people at grade 8 level, because even if you figure out how to do that on your piano at home, you're presumably going to then come to a different piano when you do your exam, or you're going to perform on a different piano, and to find that biting point on every single piano is incredibly challenging. But it is a skill that you get better and better at. I just think as little pedal as possible, doing little dabs where you need to. But you know, like I said, you don't have to. Something else that I do as well is I don't just do no pedal or loads of pedal. I play it differently every single time. So sometimes I'll sort of and so half the notes are staccato, half of them aren't, and I just use intuition. I just see how I feel, and it's different every single time. That's a lot to go into in this kind of tutorial. Anyway, you know, I'm going to try not to go into that too much, other than just to say experiment. Experiment using no pedal at the beginning, then experiment with some places where you have no pedal, some places where you pedal. Anyway, so what I think is that when it's quiet, when it's P, very little pedal, and then as you get louder, and then you as it gets louder and broadens, you use more pedal, and then as it comes back down, then it's less pedal. Now here, when it goes MF, this, loads of pedal. So kind of something you might want to experiment with is quiet staccato, loud, loads of pedal. Because when it goes loud, it's like your orchestra becomes richer. You get a much more sustained sound from all of the strings. Although maybe in the back of your mind, still hear a little pizzicato cello that every now and then just comes in a little bit. So something that I spoke about in the last video that I recorded, the last tutorial that I recorded was the Helen Hopekirk. And again, this is a massive topic that I could make hours and hours of video about, but I'm going to just try and keep this short, which is to do with tension and release. So to cut a long story short, when you have tension, you generally get louder and you slow down. And then when that tension resolves, you speed up and you get quieter. If you want to see a little bit about that, go to roughly halfway through the tutorial on the Helen Hopekirk. And basically, whatever chord you have, none of these notes have tension, but then here is tension because this is quite a consonant chord. Then you've got tension, and then this note here, this G, is not part of this chord, and then it resolves. So the G has tension, and when you have a note that resolves back to a chord tone, that is when you go louder and you slow down. And that is why there is a hairpin or crescendo decrescendo between bars 1 and 2. So what you want to do a little bit, it's not only getting louder because there's tension, but you can slow down a little bit. And then Now that was milking it. You may not want to do it that much, and I don't want to do it that much. But I'm illustrating that slowing down is a natural musical thing that you do when there's tension. Now, I'm not suggesting that you slow down and speed up that much, but what I am doing is I'm exaggerating it to show you musically how slowing down amplifies a sense of tension. And you know when there's tension a lot of the time because you see a crescendo. So experiment that every time you see a crescendo, little bit of slowing down, but also just listen, just use your ears. So like, for example, let's take this fugue subject. So ask yourself, is there tension? No, there's no tension because it's just the first note. Is there tension? No. Is there tension? Not really. Is there tension? A little bit. Is there tension? Yes, there's loads of tension on this note. This is a little bit of an unexpected note, and it's unexpected. It's an E natural. It's not part of the key signature. So something that you can experiment with doing is when you get to the E natural, how about just getting a little louder on that E natural, and then just take your time on that note. Just take a little longer. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. Da, da, da. And just take your time because that amplifies that sense of tension that you feel on it. Something else that you want to look for as a unifying theme. There's a unifying theme that runs through the prelude and the fugue, and that's let's take like what is the alto voice in the beginning, and then you've got this da, da, and this is like a little sighing motif. And every time you see that, you can lean on the first note and it resolves down. Now that's at odds with the fact that you've got this crescendo decrescendo. So it's, yeah, what they don't want, I think, is they don't want, and then you're not crescendoing to that C. This C is not what's important. It's more like, and then yeah, that crescendo is there, as if this G at the top. Da, da. So that's like telepathy. This G, you imagine it getting louder, even though you actually can't do anything with it because you've already played it. Da, da, da. But not for this inner part. Da, da, da. That gets quieter. Every time you see this kind of thing, and then again the tune, da, and then that falls, da, 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 da. So you've got this semitone resolving down, and this is the theme running the entire way through it. Every time you see two notes together, and then it falls, you want the second one to be a little bit quieter. Now this happens all the way through your fugue subject. Da, 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 da. It's a bit louder there. Da, 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 da. Now here. Da, 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 da. It's at the end of the fugue subject. Da, 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 lean. Da, 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 and then da, 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 and then da, 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 da. There. So in bar 8 in the left hand, and then and then here. So this motif is the whole way through everything. It's a tension release. So tension release. And this is everywhere. Look for this in every single place. What you don't want to do, and I have heard on YouTube some people who do the opposite. And they just go plot, 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 plot. No, please don't play it like that. Please do not play it like that. Every time you've got two notes, the second one of which is lower than the first by a semitone or a tone, it's da-da, da-da. It's tension release. If you can do that, you make everything immediately super, super musical. It will totally, totally help you. So every time I'm back to the Prelude. This really reminds me of Chopin. So this is quite, it's very, very jokey, happy-go-lucky, bum 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 bum. The music, very, very innocent, very sunny, you know. Very happy, very gentle. Now this reminds me of Chopin. This is much more emotional. This is Chopin. Very heart on sleeve. We're back to this pizzicato double bass. Chopin. Sad. And then notice it's there. So lean, resolve. Lean, resolve. It's the whole way. It's like basically the thing that unifies the Prelude and the Fugue. So, God, there's so much I could talk about. I mean, it's I don't know if this is totally obvious, but your Fugue is this theme. Every time it comes in, emphasize it. And then make everything else come down. By the way, what I am imagining when I'm listening to the Fugue, I'm imagining a very, very calm church with an organ just playing very, very calmly in the background. It's like just very, very calm and peaceful. It's very safe. Imagine a really nice sounding organ, which to me is a little bit of a contradiction in terms. I don't like organs, but I'm imagining a nice organ with a bit of a reedy sound to it. Very quiet, very calm, and this church is just very, very calming. So I'm basically hearing this thing coming in here. I'm looking at bar 10. And then everything else is just very quiet underneath it. So from bar 10. And then here the thing comes in again in bar 15 in the right hand. So yeah, so basically you can just bring the theme out. There are places where not much happens, like for example from I think bar 32, bar 33. I find it quite boring because you don't have the theme. You've just got this theme that comes round and round. So like here. Now, I just think that's not very good writing personally, so I just play very quietly, and I just I just basically in a way brush it under the carpet and just go quiet, and then until we come back in with the theme here. So the one that goes da, 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 da. I think one part that I do like to bring out is near the end of the fugue. Let's go from bar 50. And then this part here, your tenor part. That's beautiful. So on its own, from the end of bar 50, da, 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 da. And then it really is worth then being able to bring this part out from bar 52. Da, 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 which is really hard because you've got to do all that all in the right hand with the other two parts going on. And especially when that G, halfway through bar 53, to bring that G out while the E flat and the B flat are quiet, you're going to want to practice that quite a bit. I'm not going to go into in this lesson too much how you do that. Here. Quite challenging that. Anyway. There's so much that I could go into. You want to really listen for the dissonances. Really try and enjoy those. So, for example, I'm going to go from bar 10 in the fugue. Now here, bar 12. You should be able to. Now you haven't played this beat. The B has been hanging on since the third beat of the previous bar. So let me go from bar 11. You still want to hear, that's very, very dissonant. Where else do we get stuff like that? Yeah, okay, so let's go from bar 17. And then here. So, bar 19, very, very dissonant there, because you're listening, the left hand, and then you've got, you still want to be listening to these two notes when that comes in, and then it resolves. Here. So it's all about really hearing all the moments where notes that have been held become dissonant against the new notes. It's all about using your ear and really, really listening. I mean, God, I feel like I've barely scratched the surface of this piece. You know, what I will say is it's massively ambitious. It's, something I was going to say is that the whole concept of fugues, arguably Bach, and which this is modelled on. Bach arguably wrote fugues as a teaching tool. Now, he didn't just write them as a teaching tool, but there is a lot of, I think, evidence that he did write them to use them to teach people how to play things that were contrapuntal and how to play well, because it is very, very challenging. So to my mind, if you're going to play this Clara Schumann piece, you actually do want to play it in a way that you're really taking care of every single line and not letting go of notes before they need to be let go of. Or if you do let go of them, you let go of them in a way that the pedal is keeping them going. So much I could say about this, but if you're going to learn it properly so that you really are keeping every single line going, which is why I played this piece slower than the tempo markings, because for me it was important not only to try and play it with a sense of feel and as much love as I could give it, even though I'm not a massive fan of it, to be honest, but you know, there are a lot of things to like about it. So I tried to play it not only as a beautiful piece of music, but also demonstrating that I could hold every single line and take care of every single detail, because I do think that there is something, it's a teaching tool. A lot of the time we play fugues to demonstrate aspects of our technique. It's not only just because we want to make beautiful music. So it's an important consideration. Anyway, I hope that's been useful. I do just feel a little bit like, gosh, I don't know if this tutorial has been any good, because I just feel like I've just scraped a tiny bit of this giant iceberg. You know, there's so much I could say about it. So, you know, I hope this is useful and interesting. Do leave comments. If you do feel that you still have questions, that you know, you're looking at it and you think that there are things that I haven't addressed in it, leave some comments or contact me, or you know, do get in touch. And you know, if you enjoyed the tutorial, do like it. If you enjoyed the performance, do like it. The more likes and subscriptions that I get, the more other people are going to be able to notice this channel, and the more people it's going to be able to help. So anyway, yeah, hope it's been useful, and see you for the next tutorial and performance. So thanks a lot. Bye.